Welcome to Industrial PLC Applications. And this video is on addresses, aliases, and variables, and data types. This is part 1. Inside every computer, cell phone, and PLC resides memory chips to store and retrieve data. Some memory chips are read-only and cannot be erased, like the operating system of a PLC, and they're called ROM, for read-only memory. Some only hold memory while the device is turned on and operate as scratch pads. These are known as RAM, or random access memory chips. Double EEPROMs can be written and rewritten many times to store program data, like a chip-sized hard drive. It might surprise you to learn that a PLC doesn't have a lot of memory, a tiny amount compared to your cell phone. But it is not intended to do as much. But what it does have is used very efficiently. And internally, all the memory has to do is store a 1 or a 0. But it is how the memory is broken up and allocated and used that is of interest to us. Basically, what is it storing? After completing this video, you should be able to define and explain PLC memory locations such as addresses, aliases, and variables. In another video, you learned about the program scan. You learned how the first part of the scan, the PLC, examines all the inputs. In reality, it stores the current state of an input into a memory location. This memory location is read during the resolution of the logic. During the logic resolution, the PLC writes to assign memory locations that will trigger an output to turn on or to turn off. This means that every output will be rewritten every scan of the program, even if it means writing a 1 over an existing 1. As electricians, we don't know or care how the actual internal traces of the logic chips are routed or where they are physically. But we do need to understand how the memory is structured inside our program. And for that, we turn to the variable selector. To make it easier to sort out, we have 3 broad assignments to understand what we're looking at in Connected Components Workbench or other software: addresses, aliases, and variables. Addresses are physical inputs and outputs. The name comes from the first generation of PLCs, where you needed to know which terminal screw had the wiring from an input or an output. In fact, insofar as the PLC is concerned, all inputs and outputs are just variables that change. We call them addresses as a carryover, and it makes it easier to visualize and understand the source of the data. On the micrologics, inputs that are embedded in the PLC processor unit are assigned the same name and then the terminal screw, _IO, _EM, _DI, _00, which translates to input-output, embedded module, digital input, followed by the actual terminal screw number. The input's status is also shown on the PLC's status LED lights. If the input does not light up on the status display, then either it's off or there may be a problem with the wiring. Here, inputs 3, 7, and 13 are active. Outputs, wired on the bottom, follow a similar pattern and address structure and have status LEDs. IO, EM, DO for digital output, and then the actual terminal screw. For simplicity, we will just call them DI00 and DO9. As we just mentioned, we tend to shorten the long name of an input or an output address. However, that just refers to a terminal screw, and that is not very informative. In days gone by, you would have to find the blueprints to know what was connected. Addresses are easy since they're already created for us, but they do not provide any information within the program explaining what the input is monitoring or what the output is controlling. For that, we use aliases. You can see that the first instruction on run 4 has just its address, IO EMDI00, but the first instruction on run 5 has start push button underneath the address. Start push button is an alias, an alternative name that we can use to help identify or explain what a variable does. We can create aliases for most variables in a program to make the program easier to understand. Alright, so we have a digital input that has no alias. And you can see digital input 3 is a cycle stop. Okay, that's good. DI11 is a master start. Okay, good. But we don't know what this one is. Now, it's related to this bool called automatic, so I'm going to assume that's the automatic start push button. So I'm going to right click on it, and you see I've got the current address highlighted in blue. I'm going to right click and go variable selector. And that's going to jump directly to the collection. Notice at the top it's the 850, and that matches my global variables down here because this is the 850 global variables. If you have a local variable, when you right click on it, it's going to take you to the local variable to change it. Now, when you're doing aliases, you have to be patient and avoid trying to double click like you do everywhere else. You only need to click once to get the editor icon that's flashing. So then you're going to type in something that makes sense, like auto start push button. When you do that, you can go to another one, and now that's locked in. Now be careful when you do that, because accessing it from the ladder, if I leave that and go to do something else, it's going to take the next one I do and it's going to insert it. We have that correct one, so I'm going to hit OK, and now it appears where my push button is. Now you can also use this for variables that are internal, that you can give an extra amount of information. So we can right click on this one. Now this is it says it's a bool, and you'll notice it's below the digital inputs and outputs. It's a global variable anybody can use, but it's an internal one. You can't find a terminal screw. It's not an address. It's actually an internal variable. So I can still give it a name. I give it the one click until it turns white. So I'm going to say automatic running. And I'm going to look at another one and say, okay, well, I've got this one called stop. So when I want to stop, well, I've got the start, that's process. So I should make it, stop process. Because let's see what happens with this automatic. I'm going to click that and go OK. And now you have automatic running. So it's giving you some extra information, even though it's an internal coil. So I'm going to go back there for a moment. And I'm going to point out something when it comes to doing aliases, because there are a few little rules. So below that one I had start and stop. And start, it's another internal one that says, okay, start process. All right, well, I want to stop the process. So I'm going to do the same thing. And it's already saying, whoa, you can't do that. Because when you use alias, if it's already in use, it won't let you do it twice, because the point of an alias is to make something unique. There is a caveat or a catch to that, which is kind of beyond the scope of this. But at any rate, you can put aliases on both internal variables and I/O. I'm going to hit cancel on this, so I'm not going to change my program. And that's all there is to making an alias. That brings us to variables. Variables are any location of memory that can change its value. To clarify, there are some variables already created by the PLC for PLC status. We cannot manipulate them, but we can use them in a program. In this discussion, we'll focus on other variables that we can create and manipulate. It's a large subject, so it will be covered in part 2. Thanks for watching.